early days of CFD. I mean, a commercial enterprise like Fluent, and which spawned a whole business around not just computational fluid dynamics, but around simulations broadly. What was the work environment like, and what was the business model that you had imagined back then?
Yeah, great question. And as I think back on those early days, we we were we were actually, the American slang term would be winging it. We were making it up as we went, right? It was intense. It was exciting because we realized that there was a market to be chased, and that we had the tools perhaps to meet part of our customer needs, and that was very exciting. So, you pointed to the starting eight, right? I would say there were two visionaries. I call them visionaries because they're not well known in the technical community, but they are as well known as they should be. But they're the ones who really had the vision and the spark. And one of them is Dr. Ferit Boyson, who was a student of Jim Swithin back at the University of Sheffield. He had the vision of a software system that was more accessible to practicing engineers. So, at that time, there were CFD codes out there, and there were structural mechanics codes out there. They were very difficult to use because they relied on inputs that were command line inputs or input decks, right, to drive the whole software system. There was no notion of interactivity. So as a customer, as a potential user of that system, the barrier to entry was very high. So he had the vision of creating an integrated software system that allowed the user to set up a mesh and solve the problem and look at the results interactively by working hand in hand in real time with such a system. There was nothing like that on the planet. The second part of it, which I'm so glad you brought up the question of the business model, because this is something students might want to think about, is often as technologists, as developers, or as a researcher, we think that the field or the particular technical topic we're advancing is the next big thing, right? It's perfect. It should be exciting to people. But that should be useful and should be exciting has to be measured against what is it that there is a customer need for, right? So the second individual I'll mention, his name was Dr. Bharatan Patel. He was a consultant in an engineering consulting company called Crihari in the United States. He had the vision to see that, one, there was a need for commercial CFD of a different kind that was more accessible to the general engineering community, number one, not specialists, not researchers, but practicing engineers. And second, he came up with the business model that I think of it, at that time it was pure genius. Now almost every software company follows that model. And it was the notion of not selling software, but selling a relationship to enable the customer to solve their problems. In other words, there was a tool and there were services like technical support that went with it. So the business model was like this, the licensing model. One, it was not so much a one-time payment by the customer or a paid-up license, as we would call it. It was a lease model. Nowadays, we take a lease model for software for granted, yes, right? But in those days, it was a new thing. So he came up with a lease model that lowered the entry price for the customer. But the lease was not just for the tool, it was for unlimited technical support. And I personally think that's my hypothesis, that yes, of course, we were fortunate in timing. Computer hardware had progressed to the point that you could solve reasonable problems. But also the business model that supported the software that went with it was the right one. It allowed customers to reduce their risk. They said, oh, well, I'm getting a piece of software, but I'm also getting the expertise behind it.